What's up, my do life in a body you love chicks? I have an amazing guest for you today. My friend Jen, who is a recovery coach. She's a huge advocate for all things sober living, recovery. She has predominantly helps like midlife age range women. But she's so passionate about this. She's actually now in college campuses talking prevention, giving our young people tools. And I love the way that she talks about all things, not just sobriety. But this chick has got mad wisdom on many, many, many topics that just in general help women live better lives, in my opinion. And so, of course, I had to invite her on the podcast. So, like, Jen, thanks so much for being here.
Oh my gosh, Nikki, thank you so much. You're so awesome.
Yeah,
And
girl,
thanks
I
for
love every
having
time that I hear
me.
you talking about stuff. I'm like, girl, she's so wise. Okay, come talk to us. So
I
you
love
can
this.
jump in and just kind of let us know a little bit about like your story, the work that you
Mhm.
do, the things that you're passionate about, because I know like you just sharing
Yeah.
that is going to unpack so many golden nuggets for the
Yeah.
girls who are listening.
Yeah. So I got sober, not because I wanted to. So I know that there's a lot of sober curious people out there, which is awesome. A lot of people are getting sober because for health purposes, and they're seeing that, especially women over 40, when you drink, it impacts your sleep cycle. So there's all these reasons why people aren't really drinking like they used to, which is awesome. I wasn't that person. So I was the person who has a record and was third time's a charm getting arrested and lots of other stories and lots of other adventures and geographical cures that did not work. They made it worse and brought me to recovery faster. And I am really, truly grateful to be alive and to be sober for nearly 18 years coming up here in April, which is amazing. But when I first got sober, I really just went into this good girl mode and this like, okay, everyone's gonna like me. I'm gonna do the right thing, and this is gonna be amazing. And I'm just gonna be the good girl. And I'm gonna do things so that my family loves me. I'm gonna do things so that other people love me. And I went into people pleasing, and I also went into go, 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 go mode of like doing everything all the time and not stopping. And anybody in recovery will tell you you have to heal the core root of your the issue why you were drinking in the first place. And if you don't heal that, you're gonna start drinking again. And it was at 4 years sober that I had a beer an inch away from my mouth. And fortunately, my husband took it out of my hand. He cleared the alcohol out of our house completely. And I dove into a healing um, chapter of my life, which lasted for about 2.5 years of really healing the sexual abuse that led to me numbing out so much that I did. And so, what's really cool about it is that God just handed me all these amazing women to help along their journey that had similar stories than me. And it just kind of morphed into me coaching. And so, I have a lot of I have courses on pleasure, on relationships, on love, reconnecting with your body. And I also coach a lot of people with codependency and sobriety. So it's kind of just this really big thing. But I got sober when I was 23 and I was in college. So there's a lot of things that I had to do differently. Um, and here we are today. So I'm just so grateful to be here. So thanks for having me, Nikki. This is fun.
I love that. Oh my gosh, there's so many things we could rabbit hole down. So I think when we got introduced to each other, you were doing a lot with like the pleasure stuff.
Mhm.
And then we were also like talking about God. And I was like, oh, I love her. She's a woman who loves God and she still wants to talk about how sex should be enjoyable for women.
Yeah.
Holla frickin' Luya. Let's
Yeah.
go. And that was like my initial, like, oh, okay, she's my people. And there's
Yeah.
so many layers to this. So it's
Yeah.
interesting that you went into good girl mode, and that makes sense,
Mhm.
I guess, because like you just came out of this like dark place, right? And now it's
Yes.
like, I'm trying to run hard in the other direction. Is that something that a lot of women struggle with as they're getting sober or they're getting out of anything that they view as like they were being bad?
I would say so. I mean, even codependency. So you think about the good girl, like you could say mentality, and you transfer that into the bedroom, and it's like you're doing things to give them pleasure. You're doing things. So for instance, somebody who comes from like sexual abuse in my story, it was like, well, I'm here to please you. This isn't about me, or I'm gonna fake this orgasm, or I'm gonna like, instead of truly exploring and owning, if you can't climax, owning if you don't want to have sex, not just saying yes because, oh, well, I should. They want to have sex, so I should say yes. My husband was the first one ever to not be manipulated by sex, which I think made me want him even more. And I'll never forget that. I wanted to have sex with him right away. And, him and I met 3 weeks before I got sober. So I think that's a huge reason why him and I had some hard times in the beginning of our marriage is because I avoided the sexual healing. I avoided a lot of my healing work and used him as my higher power. I used him to escape that. I used him to give me validation so that I could avoid all of that. So I think, yes, a lot of women use people pleasing and a lot of women use like enabling other people or not standing up for themselves and not vocalizing. If you can't say no to somebody for a coffee date, how are you supposed to say no in the bedroom and tell them what you actually want? How are you supposed to explain your biggest fantasies? How are you supposed to tell somebody like intimately your truth if you can't even tell somebody if you want pizza for dinner or a salad? Like, it's like, come on. Like,
Good point.
yeah.
Good point. It's so funny for me to like knowing your personality to picture you trying to conform to like this good girl image because you're just such a like bubbly, boisterous,
Yeah.
opinionated woman from what I've seen.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to like get back to like your own personality?
I would say 5 years sober. There was a year after me almost drinking that was like a lot of coaching, a lot of like, I mean, we're talking, I spent a mortgage payment on coaching and programs, and really diving into it and getting uncomfortable. To the point where, as you know, my husband and I were separated for 2.5 years. So, us being separated for that time and me choosing to move in with my parents and living over the garage was a very humbling time in my life. And but what was really cool is when you're down on rock bottom, I mean, you can't really get any lower. So it was just like I just let myself feel for the first time ever. And I fell apart and I trusted and I surrendered. And so that was a very uncomfortable time because I had to then tell my mom no. I had to set boundaries with her, which I had never done ever. And so, and if I did set boundaries with her, I would do it in a very abrasive way. I would do it in a very like, I can do what I want. This time, this go around of me doing it was in a healthy way of like, no, that's between like my husband and I. Like you and I aren't talking about that. And she's like, but I want to make sure the two of you are okay. And I'm like, I know that you love us and care about us, but that's our marriage. And so really setting boundaries so that him and I could come back together and really cherish that private, intimate space that we had. We couldn't do that if I was just letting people in left and right to our personal business. Like I had a coach, I had a therapist, I had those people. I didn't need to be talking about all the stuff with everybody. And so I think one of the biggest things for me stepping out of that good girl mentality is getting okay with people not liking me, getting okay with not like being friends with everybody, and I really tightened my circle. And so you really find out like who are your people. And even now, like nearly 18 years later, Nikki, like there are some people I've had to set boundaries with in the last year that were some of the hardest decisions that I ever had to make and the easiest ones. So it's like it
I'm
doesn't,
like, yes, say more about that.
yeah. So those things in life that you're like, if anybody did this, cut off. And it's like such an obvious, like, well, of course you would cut that person off. But then it happens. And you're like, oh shit. Like I said, if this ever happened,
Because I didn't really think that it would.
yeah, it never. So then you get over the shock of it actually happening. You get over the shock of like being, and then you're like, okay. And then I have my awesome husband who is so grounded and so just emotionally intelligent. And he's like, I mean, yeah, I don't really see there being any other way to go. And it's like, yeah, but everybody else in this situation is just acting like it's not happening. Everybody else is just setting boundaries, but keeping everybody together. And he's like, yeah, but Jen, come on. And I'm like, yeah, that's not us. And so there's still been some backlash over it. But as a family unit, we're doing great. And so like that's the thing is that when it all comes back to it, it's well, what's best for us? Which totally goes against Italian family loyalty. Like it goes completely against that. So when you're raised in an Italian Catholic family that is filled with the mentality of you love people and accept them and you forgive them, you got to forgive. And it's like, I can forgive people all day long, but that does not mean that they have the privilege and the right and the access to me and my family. And that was something totally different that I wasn't raised with that that I'm really glad I get to do differently.
That's awesome. Yeah. And so it's interesting that you said it was the hardest thing, but it was also the easiest. I'm assuming easiest once it was actually done and then you saw the benefit of it.
Yeah, once you hire like three experts to be like, hey, am I seeing this clearly? Like, can you call me on my bullshit? Is this the
Am I just
proper
being a
way?
Karen here and a spoiled
Yeah.
brat, or is this legitimately as dark as it
Is
seems and I need to tuck tail and get the
right.
hell out of here?
Exactly. And so, like, when you hire experts and your husband and you have such a good relationship, you could talk about these things. And then you're just like, huh, every expert is saying the exact same thing, but we're the black sheep out of the group. And so that's where you start second guessing yourself.
Mhm.
And that's why I hired the experts because I wasn't going to make certain decisions on my own. It was like, well, yeah, I mean, I do a lot of this for a living, but I'm not going to get jaded on this. If I'm going to make this decision, it's going to come from an expert and I'm going to make sure that it's communicated clearly. So I'm going to write it down and I'm going to just give the person the piece of paper. So each person has the exact same story. It's not based on me communicating it. What if I forget something? What if I say something wrong? What if I'm feeling extra spicy and like say something different? Who knows? So it's just like I did that across the board and every single person said the same thing. And so that's the point where you step back and go, okay, this is what we're doing. And this is the best thing long term for our family. And that is it's hard, but it's easy.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where it's just like, nope, this happened and this is what we're going to do. But again, people don't like that.
Oh, well,
People
no,
get
nobody likes
really,
it when somebody throws up boundaries. But I like how
yeah,
you're talking about how you go about establishing boundaries. You're not talking about willy-nilly, like, I feel an emotion. You said something that I don't like and I'm offended. And so I'm putting up a boundary because sometimes I think people use the word boundary to mean I'm just not going to have serious conversations and anybody who hurts my feelings is a no. And it's like,
yeah,
okay, well, we don't need to be that aggressive with our boundaries, but that's not what you're talking about. You are very, very intentionally making decisions, but you're not doing it from this good girl place where I'm just going to let everybody walk all over me and people please. You're also not being hyper emotional and overreactive. It's logical. And it's strategic and then it's communicated clearly.
yes. Yes, and that's exactly, and I love how you said that because I'm also a travel hockey mom. And when you're in travel sports, you come across a lot of different personalities, you know, and everybody is there to, it's their kid. When something happens to your kid, if it did, whatever. And I've shared a lot on my opinion when it comes to being included. And so being a good girl, you always want to be included. You always want to be on that group chat. You always want to be invited over for that whatever random night hangout. And I'm really glad I did this work before I became a sports mom, like a travel sports mom, because holy shit, Nikki. Like at the end of the day, when people are like, oh, but they didn't text me, but I'm not on this group chat, but they didn't include me, but I didn't get invited. And I'm like, look, one, you don't have time to be included in on everything. And two, they don't have to include, we're adults. They do not have to, nor should they have to invite everybody on the team. But it feels like a clique. Well, then I feel like that's a you problem. Because at the end of the day, yeah, maybe there are cliques. And it's just like, move the fuck on. Like, here's the thing is that we can make things about our kids, about us, and all this stuff. And it's like, look, I don't got time for this bullshit. Like, here's the deal is that there are going to be times where you're not included. There are going to be times where your feelings may be hurt. And to come back to sobriety, I haven't been invited to some parties, and I know it was because I'm sober. And I would love to tell you at 18, nearly 18 years sober, that, oh my gosh, no big deal. The longer you stay sober, no big deal. No, it was a gut punch because it was like kept as like a secret. And it was like Anne not invited. And I'm just like, look, I know that it was like a total rager and there was like tons of drinking and it was like insanity. I get that. So, but I like to be invited so that I can make the decision. So I can say, like, you're not going to be included in on everything. That situation really helped me, like, feel my feelings over that and be like, okay, this is a me thing. This is me having childhood stuff and not being included in like the cool girl group and bringing it into adulthood. And so, like, when you process something like that, you go into these things and you're like, yeah, I mean, it kind of stung if I wasn't invited, but my kids are always invited to the things they're supposed to be at. I'm invited to things I'm supposed to be invited to. And if I'm not invited or I'm not included, like, hey, that's life. And that goes back to God and trusting God and surrendering to God and knowing that I'm going to be exactly where I'm supposed to be. And I'm always, it's this or something better every single time. So why am I going to try to micromanage it, right? There was a picture this past weekend in Chicago at our hockey tournament. There was a picture of all the kids in front of like this Christmas tree, which I was surprised there was still a Christmas tree up in February, but it was Chicago. So there's and and they sent the picture through the group chat and I looked at it and I couldn't find my kid. My kid's a goalie and he was like warming up in a separate area when they took the photo, right? And so I looked at it and I was like, oh, bummer, he missed the photo. And one of the moms was like, oh, Jen, do you need us to retake the photo? And I was like, look, if I need photo proof to feel included, like we got bigger problems. I was like, don't even worry about it. Like, I will be fine. It's not a big deal. Like, it's okay. And so it goes back to just knowing and trusting that you are where you're supposed to be, and that is not always easy. But when you know who you are, you know what you stand for. And it goes back to like when you get to know yourself in the bedroom in that pleasureful way, you get to know so many other parts of yourself throughout your life that you didn't know existed. And when you get to know yourself better, you get to know God better. And when you create that solid foundation in that relationship, you can then speak up for yourself or not say as much. And not saying as much is really hard for me sometimes. My husband will be like, Jen, just keep your mouth shut. Just, right? Yeah. Yeah. So,
Relatable.
yeah.
My husband's like, sometimes you can say less.
Yeah. That's what Ray says. He goes, I don't want to tell you how to talk. I don't want to tell you how to process or what to say, but have you ever considered not saying as much?
Like, say it at home,
Yeah.
but like, you don't have to say all the things to all the
Yes.
people.
Yes. Yes.
But I like this point. This is a really solid point that you're making that, like, when you have a strong connection to God, you have a lot of faith, then, like, ultimately, what is it that we're called to do? Whatever His will is, right?
Hmm.
And so when you know that, like, you're here to do His will and He's got your back, and so everything else just becomes a little bit not in a nihilistic nothing matters way, but in a everything's bigger than me way. And
Yeah.
so it doesn't really matter if I got invited to the party. It doesn't really matter if my kid's not in this photo. Like at the end of the day, these are not the things that identify who I am as a child of God and who I am as a human and a mother and knowing yourself, trusting yourself, loving yourself enough to stand up for yourself not in a jerky way, which it sounds like you're like me, and that's where I can tend to go. I'm very much like, especially if it's somebody in my tribe, I got big mama bear vibes and I'm like, oh, I will cut you. Like, okay, so I got to tone that down a little bit and sometimes let God handle it, right?
Yeah,
But it's all a
totally
work
get
in
it.
progress.
It is. It is.
But you're just more solid, you're more grounded, and those things don't hit, they still hit. We're
Yeah.
still people, we still have emotions, but you can kind of zoom out and give yourself better perspective,
Yes.
which I mean, I would assume is important for sobriety to be able to do these things.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole reason why, right? So when we get sober, we first heal our relationship with ourselves, and then we heal our relationship with others. So the first portion of sobriety is coming back home to yourself. And then it's learning how to, I'm sober now. I get to choose who I surround myself with. And that includes family. And I think that's one of the biggest, hardest lessons I've ever had to learn is that just because somebody's blood doesn't mean that they get access to my life. And that's a tough one, right? But like you said, it's all coming back to, okay, if I'm coming to God with this and I'm praying on this and I'm being intentional about this and I'm also bringing in an outside person and I'm not making all these decisions willy-nilly, like I get to do, because I used to be like such a sassy person in like the most dysfunctional, toxic way, right? Like you don't go and work in a strip club and do this shit and then think like, oh, I know exactly how to communicate. No, I knew how to manipulate and I knew how to get what I wanted from everybody and anybody. Like it was like I always got what I wanted and I always got the guy I wanted. I always got whatever. But it was in such a manipulative, toxic way. And so when I got sober, it was learning how to not do that, not be that person that try to force and control and really allowed, like if you clench your fist like up really, really tight and then you tense your muscles up your arm and then you tense like your neck and your jaw and you're just tensing your entire body up and you hold that for like a minute, then just like slowly open up your palms and your hands and really just like slowly untense your muscles. It's like that's how life is supposed to be. That's with your relationship with God. And I'm not a religious person. I was raised Catholic, but I'm spiritual. And we pray, we talk about angels, guardian angels. I teach my kids like how to connect with their higher power. Um, but at the end of the day, it's like if you want to live like super tensed up and going and doing and having all those achievements and like, I mean, I had those achievements. I had that success and I was dead inside. I was a dressed up trash can. And so at the end of the day, I did not allow God in. I basically was like, well, I'm God. I don't need you. And when you live that way, I mean, you're not going to have good relationships, one. And I also want to say that I had a six pack and I was in the best shape of my life. And so many people would be like, once I get in shape, everything will be great. And it's like, no, it won't. Like, it doesn't just magically, like, oh, you get in shape. I was freaking ripped and I was healthy as can be. Well, healthier, not on an emotional level, but
You looked really healthy.
yes, I did. Oh, I looked amazing.
You're like, oh, she works out.
Oh, hey.
You're like,
Yeah.
yeah, but inside I'm a train wreck.
Right? But I was raised in a performative family that looks meant a lot. Being in shape and being healthy meant that you were successful, right? Like there's all these associations. And so when I really stepped back and started healing internally, I also had to address the issue of even if I don't look perfect, it doesn't mean I'm not worthy.
Yes.
That was hard.
Girl, that's a hard one for literally everybody in this as a weight loss coach who predominantly works with like perimenopausal and menopausal women. Let me just tell you, this is an ongoing conversation. They get to their goal weight. I have women in their 50s and 60s who have abs and they're wearing bikinis on vacations right now, okay? And they couldn't even zip their pants when we met. And that's great. But I'm like, it doesn't bring you the level of happiness that you think that it's going to if how you view yourself hasn't changed and depending on what drove you to get there. Happiness is not a number on a scale, it's not a number in your bank account. all of the things that we chase. Chase after those things. I'm here for it. I'm all about big bank accounts, banging abs, amazing sex lives, all the things. I want you to have all of those things, but in a way where you get to them and you actually enjoy them. It's not out of performance. It's you doing it because you love yourself and you like your process. You like how you're getting to those places. It's not through manipulation of yourself or others or punishment or being good. It's just like I just want to push my body because I can and I want to see what it'll do. Let's go. It's different.
Exactly. And I think that's like the number one thing I look at. There's a woman I worked with for a month, okay? And at the end of the month, her and her husband were married for 18 years. He had never gotten her like a present, really, or written a nice card. And she just worked solely on herself. And her and I dove deep into lots of different layers. And by the end of it, he gave her a card and like bought her a jewelry, like a necklace for the first time ever, and was like, I really love you and I want for us to, like, he wrote this whole love note. And she was like, you have no idea what this means to me. Like, I could get teary-eyed. And it's like, that's the stuff, right? And then, like, another woman who got sober married the man of her dreams. And I, like, got to stand up in her wedding. Like, that's the type of stuff, right? Like, it's the women who are like, gosh, look at my train wreck of a past, but I want to be happy, joyous, and free. And like, please, like, help me get there. And we dive deep into all those layers because they then realize, like, wait a second, gosh, I haven't had like, there was one woman who she hadn't had an orgasm in several years. She was in chemotherapy and she took one of my classes and she had her first orgasm in 4 years. And it's like, you don't realize how important those things are until they happen and you're like, holy shit, I thought the success and achievement was really important. When actually, when I dive into this, when you dive into your health, like your clients dive into their health, it's like you dive into those things and you're like, huh, all those pieces of paper on the wall really don't really matter.
Mhm.
Like, this is priceless. And I feel like that's the work you and I do. It's like, it's priceless. You're talking about love, romance, health, connect, like that's priceless. And there's no app, there's no AI that is like gonna fix that. There's no
No, in
shortcut.
any avenue that you're trying to like succeed in, it's just such a more sustainable and effective process when you start by doing the internal work, but it's also the only way that it's ever going to provide any value or meaning either. And I just had a really good question that I wanted to ask you, and my perimenopause brain just scrolled out and it's gone. Okay, this is something that I'm curious about because I get this comes up a lot for women who are like sober curious,
Mhm.
or even some of my clients, like they don't have like an alcohol abuse problem, but they have these other health reasons why they can no longer have alcohol, or they just don't want to. Because back to your point about sleep, ladies, if you think alcohol, okay, let me just say, I'm gonna jump on my health soapbox for just
Yeah,
1 second, and then we'll
please.
digress back to the point. But like, I am not here to tell you guys to not to drink alcohol. I drink alcohol. I'm not a sober person. I drink alcohol very rarely because I'm an old person who can't handle their booze anymore. And now, like, even like 2 glasses of wine, I'm gonna be hungover for 3 days because I have a histamine intolerance. And like, this is just not worth it. So it's got to be really worth it for me. And it rarely is. I'm not here to say don't drink, but this whole idea that there's an amount of alcohol that's good for your health is a lie. There's no amount of alcohol that is good for your health. Can alcohol be included in part of a healthy lifestyle? For some people, absolutely. Not for others, but for some. But that doesn't mean that the alcohol itself is a health tool. This is a misunderstanding of how to use shitty research studies, basically. And if y'all want to talk about that, we can do that another day. If you want to know how alcohol actually affects you, get a freaking sleep tracker. Get a sleep tracker. Not if you're sober, but if you're a non-sober person and you have yourself some booze and you go to bed, babe, and you can see even a small amount how it impacts just something as simple as your sleep. You think alcohol puts you to sleep. No, if you drink enough of it, you pass out. It is not restorative sleep when you're passed out, though. You get like zero deep sleep, zero REM. It's like you were like a dead little vampire, but your brain wasn't getting any of the cognitive benefits of being asleep. You laid in your bed for a certain amount of time with no restoration happening. Your body temperature doesn't go down like it's supposed to. Your heart rate doesn't go down like it's supposed to. Your brain doesn't do any of the things. And it's like over time, this takes a toll. And so when you're young, you kind of get away with things. And then as you're older and your body's just a little bit more sensitive, and she's putting up her own boundaries. I like to equate the perimenopausal woman's metabolism to a woman stepping into her boundaries. Women tend to do this with age. So does your body. And she's sick of your bullshit. And she's just like, we're not doing this anymore. That was cute when you were 23 doing keg stands, but this shit ain't it for me anymore. And also, I'm done with your fasting. Feed me breakfast. And like, she's just throwing up all these things, right? And so, for my clients, a lot of them choose not because I make it be part of their plan. You do what you want with alcohol when you're working with me, but a lot of them start to see how it's impacting their physical and their mental well being. And they're like, I just want to have less of it. But here's the catch 22, they don't want to feel socially isolated. And you do, your social life is different. How do women work through this?
So I think this also comes back to not giving a shit what other people think. So, and that's really, it was really fascinating to me. I was at like a women's event and I was hanging out. It was like the weekend before Halloween. And so we all, a group of us, some of the speakers, the host, we went out to a bar like after the event and we were like dancing and like we were seeing like this costume contest. And I was just like I was having an awesome time with me and my Diet Coke. And I was like loving life. And I think I had a sugar-free Red Bull or something. Like I was like super content and happy. And, I lived those like 3 days just like I normally do, which is just, I don't need a substance to be happy, right? And I was just being myself. And at the end of the day, when I look at booze, it's life or death. Okay, like I'm gonna end up one of three places, and that's like either in a casket, in the psych ward, or in jail. And so like when I became a mom, it became that much easier for me to not drink. And so like I was laughing with a mom the other day. I was like, they're like, Jen, I don't know how like you don't drink at like sport events or like, during certain stuff. And I was like, yeah, so like I would have been like texting apologies the whole way home from Chicago. Like if I were to be drinking, like this, like mending relationships and being like, yeah, sorry as an asshole. Um, and I don't have to do that now because I don't do that, right? So when it comes back to the social part, though, I had a woman tell me, and this is like a seven-figure earner, and it was a year later, and she goes, I want to tell you that watching you dance in that club and not drink that whole weekend changed my entire perspective of what's possible. And I go, what do you mean? Like, I was
You're
like,
like,
tell
I'm
me
just doing
more.
me. I'm just
I
having a
know.
good time.
I know. I was like, please tell me more. And she goes, I stopped drinking after that. She goes, I realized that I could be happy, I could have fun, and I could still hang out with my friends. And you showed me that that was possible. And I was like, damn, like I've had other people tell me that before, but like when somebody who is as successful as like a seven-figure earner who has like a huge brand, they're also like very healthy, they're very emotionally healthy, like you forget that like people are always watching. And it doesn't matter who you are, right? Like it doesn't. I mean, and they're always watching. And so how do you have fun? How do you find out who your real friends are? You find out, I've had some people tell me that their spouse had a very hard time with them getting sober.
Oh yeah, because if one person's still drinking, now I just lost my drinking buddy.
100%. And so a lot of people get sober for like 1 month and then they go back to drink. I've had people come to tell me like, "Hey, me and my husband have an amazing relationship, but I've never admitted this to anybody. But Jen, I don't think like you and Ray are like really happy and have a great marriage. I don't think my husband could be supportive Like, I don't think we'd stay together if I didn't have alcohol because everything we do revolves around alcohol. All the
Mhm.
way down to getting lunch in the middle of the day, going out on the weekends, having friends over, and like everyone's drinking all the time. Again, this goes back to like us having kids. I don't want my kids to associate fun with booze. And so that's what makes it a lot easier too, is they can see mom and dad have fun and we don't need to have a drink in our hand. Now, they might associate energy drinks with like fun. That's about,
So, like, if we want her to get up off that
right?
chair, we need a
Yeah,
Red
right.
Bull.
Hey. But yeah, I would really say is it gets you uncomfortable and it teaches you to like really, and it allows for you to lean into that, like that sexy goddess, that playful, that pleasure queen, that energy that it's just like she's always wanted to come out, but you've had this good girl perception and persona, and booze maybe helps you get her out. And so it's not that you don't know how to have fun, it's that you're scared shitless of being unapologetic and being your full self and dancing on the table sober. And some people still want to use the alcohol excuse of like, well, I can be free. And I'm the first one to say the first time I ever drank, I was like dancing through a forest topless. Like, I get it. Okay. Like, I get it. And I had so much fun. And I was like, I can't,
Go
I
on
woke up
brand for you.
dude, right? And I woke up the next day, biggest headache. I felt so sick. And the first thing I thought of is, when can I do that again?
Because
Because
it's so fun.
it's so fun. And because my brain, the chatter inside stopped. And so a lot of women, it's not that like, oh, well, like the social, it's like, well, no, you use it to medicate, to calm the noises in your head, to calm down, to avoid the stress, to not have to deal with certain things. And so when you learn how to feel your feelings, when you learn how to stand up for yourself, when you learn how to set boundaries and really communicate your needs, but also like you just said, Nikki, you don't always have to communicate your needs. Boundaries don't always mean a conversation.
Yeah, sometimes it's silence and not over explaining yourself and your point and needing to be seen and needing the other person to understand. It, it doesn't matter if the other person understands. What they think isn't any of your business. Don't worry about it.
Exactly. And it's really interesting. I just thought of this. You know, I ran so many programs, six month long containers, and a lot, I would say 2/3 of the people that came in weren't sober, right? But a majority of them left sober. And they did not join to get sober. They joined to like really work on their relationships, heal emotionally, heal from sexual trauma, heal all of that. And they left being like, gosh, I love myself so much and I have so much fun with me. And I truly came home to myself like, I don't want to drink.
Mhm.
And, you know, maybe it's like they go off for a year and they're sober for a year and then they start drinking again. They didn't have a problem. So it really doesn't like whatever.
Right.
My point is that when you truly connect with yourself and you really enjoy yourself, drinking is just a barrier at that point. Like you said, there's like very few moments where it's like, oh, alcohol, that would be really like a good choice. Now, here's the thing, at the end of the day, I wish I could drink like a normal person. At the end of the day, I wish I could have been like at the bar hanging out with all like the hockey parents, just drinking, buying rounds of shots. Like, I wish I could. And at the same time, I'm glad that I'm not because I was in the hotel room with my kids. So, yes, like I wish I could like fit in sometimes. And then other times I'm like, I was never meant to fit in. That's
And fit
never
into
like,
what? And is
I
it real
know.
fun?
Right? Yeah. And that's just not my journey. And so it's getting comfortable with like God's mission, God's like why I'm here on this planet. And I'm here on this planet to show people being unapologetically happy, joyous, and free and sober while doing it and enjoying sex, enjoying pleasure, and all of that. And you can have a relationship with God during all of this. Like, and that's the cool thing about it. Like, you can enjoy sex, you can talk about sex, you can do like, and you don't need to be this person for everyone else. You have to be you for yourself first. And then you allow people to get to know the real unapologetic you. And then some relationships fall away in the meantime.
And I would assume others strengthen.
Exactly. And then new relationships come into play,
And
right?
then you're actually happy in your relationships that you have instead of having a bunch of superficial ones that suck the soul out of you.
Yeah,
Suck the
or
soul
yeah,
right out of your body. You
yeah,
have smaller ones, but that are actually more meaningful. And
yeah.
so it's so interesting because we equate, I think a lot of us, especially those of us who partied as teenagers,
Yeah.
we equate fun to alcohol. And that's a really hard thing for people to untether the two. And I know for me, when I untethered it, because I did equate that. Like I knew for when I was a child that I was going to be a partier when I was a teenager. I don't know why I knew that, but I was like, I can't wait to be old enough to like drink booze and make out with boys. And like, but why? Was that one of my 7-year-old ambitions? Like, okay, but it was. And then it was very quickly like, oh, I have to untether fun from alcohol. You can actually have fun without alcohol. And I don't have like social anxiety. I know that's a big trigger for people who over consume, even if they don't view themselves as having an alcohol problem, but then when they go out, they don't have an off switch. And it's like, I'm compensating to feel good and not feel socially anxious, and that I'm a fun person because I'm relaxed. I can go out, and this has literally happened several times where people think I'm drunk, and I've had 0 drops of alcohol because I'm just such a wild human and I give 0 Fs. And I will get up on the table and dance with you if I have the energy. If I have the
Yes.
energy for it, I'm gonna get wild. You go and think I'm drinking and I need a DD, but I don't. But I know not everybody has that. Like, so it's, but it still comes back to, yeah, but how do you handle the thing that stands in between you and sober fun? So is it social anxiety? Is
Mhm.
it you? People are gonna look at you. Girl, when you're blacked out acting like an idiot, people are looking at you anyways. You just don't know it. Like,
Yeah. Right?
it's just
Yeah.
reframing these things, right? And then like if you don't have a drinking problem, so you're comfortable being in a situation where there is alcohol, then you just go and you just order a mocktail, not to fake drink, but just to feel like,
Bring your
okay,
own drink.
I'm having
I,
something special
yeah.
that's not water.
Well, wherever I go, I usually always have a drink with me in the car. So, and I always have an exit plan. So I don't go somewhere unprepared. There's always drinks that I like, that I enjoy drinking, that I'm excited about drinking, that I have on hand. And I think that's also with a health journey. You're not gonna like go on a vacation and have no plan whatsoever, or like go on a work trip and have no plan, right? You're gonna have a plan. And so the exit strategy is when I first quit drinking, Ray was always on board with us leaving at any moment. At any moment, if I was triggered at all and was about to drink, he would be fine with getting in the car and leaving immediately. And so, did I ever have to use that? No. And I think the reason why is because I had it. So, and nowadays, like I got sober back in the day, like now there's Uber and Lyft. Like you don't have to have the person you drove with be on board. You can just get in a Lyft and go. Like,
Yeah, so if you're solo
right.
riding this too, maybe it's just giving yourself that
Yeah.
permission before you go out that like,
Mhm.
I'm going. Especially if you have social anxiety. Maybe this would
Yeah,
be extra helpful. I'm
exactly.
going, I'm showing up. I'm going to do the uncomfortable thing and walk in the door sober and
Yes.
feel like everybody's looking at me, even though they're not. Nobody's looking at you. Everybody's worried about
Nobody cares.
themselves. That's a whole different podcast.
Yeah.
Uh, but I'm
Nobody
going to
gives
let
a shit.
myself leave. I'm not going to tell myself I have to stay until midnight. I'm not Cinderella the pump. I'm not turning into a pumpkin. What the half? I can leave whenever I want.
Yes. And that's exactly correct. It's like you go in with a plan. You go in prepared. You go, you play out the whole situation and go, okay, so this is what's going to be there. What do I need? Maybe you have a few people on hand that you can call or text if you get uncomfortable. Like I had 20 women on hand in a recovery circle that I was able to text after I went to my first wedding and stood up in my first wedding at 2.5 months sober. It was
Talk
not
about
easy.
pressure.
It was not easy. I had my little pink Sprint flip phone and I was texting with the numbers like and it was like a whole but I was texting and reaching out. I was like, okay, now I'm in the ballroom. Now there's this. Now there and it was a very lavish, beautiful wedding. And I just sat in a chair and like my sister and I got in a fight that night, but I didn't drink. So that's the thing is you also learn how to regulate your emotions and not take your anger or your anxiety out on other people. So that's the other thing is you really learn a lot about yourself and there's going to be there's going to be backlash, there's going to be discomfort. I mean, I'd be lying to you. It's like if somebody who was eating like 5,000 calories a day decided to start working out and eating healthy, and all of a sudden they're not eating fast food, they're eating all like home cooked meals. That's going to be uncomfortable. Like that is a lifestyle change. And not everybody is going to be on board because some people really like when they have their buddy with them that will eat more than them, that will go to fast food, or that will go out to eat with them all the time. All of a sudden, they're saying no. That's not always comfortable.
No, because as you change, it is creating change for the people around you, whether they like it or not. And then you have this layer of having to be comfortable with that. And this is true for health, sobriety, literally anything.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
the
And
nature of being in relationships is when you change, it affects other people,
it does, even if it's positive.
even if they don't want it and it's positive.
Exactly. And that's the thing is that like going back to like boundaries that I've set, people who don't like them are people who usually expect performative measures. So, for instance, they usually expect me to say yes to everything so that they're comfortable, so that their world doesn't change, so that they don't have to have any conversations with their kids. And so, if I just say yes to everything, then we can stay in this little happy bubble. Everybody can just like look at us and think like everything's great and we're just one big, like happy group of people. And it's like, life doesn't work that way. And me setting boundaries, you can have conversations with your kids or not, but I'm not going to sit along the sidelines and co-sign for this bullshit.
I'm
And
not playing
that
this Truman Show game
really,
with you anymore.
no, but that really pisses people off. And here's the thing is at the end of the day, Nikki, with any boundary, I wasn't going to like recruit people to come on my side. That's the other thing to know is that when you're in a healthy place, you're not recruiting people. You're just like, this is what I'm doing. Done. Like mic drop. And then other people come because they have their opinion. It's like, no, you're allowed to think that. You're allowed to have your feelings. And they're like, wait, that's it? And I was like, I'm not gonna try and change your mind. I'm not gonna, you do what you need to do and I'll do what I need to do, but you don't need to bully me. You don't need to talk shit. You don't need to be mean. We can both have our separate situations of how we think it's healthiest to go through this life-changing moment. And we can both choose to see it differently. And you can do it one way and I can do it another way, but we don't need to verbally abuse each other in the meantime. And so, like, that's the healthy way of setting boundaries. You don't need to demand that someone understands. It's when you learn that other people won't understand. You are going to be the villain in someone else's story. And you can say, okay, I'm going to feel my feelings about that and I'm going to move on because what someone thinks of me is none of my business.
That's one of my favorite sayings. My favorite word is no. Just personal anecdote. I married a man whose last name was O'Day, just so my initials would be N-O. I was like, oh, my favorite words. Now my initials. Great. Comes with no explanations. It's just a word. You just get to hear it. I'm not explaining. And what somebody thinks of me is none of my business. These are like my little life
Yeah.
philosophies here. So I love all of that and fully support that. This has been extremely helpful, I think, on multiple levels, whether people are sober curious, actually sober, or have no interest in being sober, but have some people-pleasing tendencies, or I don't know, girl, you just unpacked so much. So if women want to follow you for all of the wisdom that you drop, or they even want to work with you, where can these chicks get more Jen in their life?
So you can check out on Facebook or Instagram, Jen Stoney with a G. So it's Genstoney. And feel free to message me, send me a message. So there's lots of different ways, Telegram, private mentorship, different ways that we can work together. And yeah, I can't wait to connect with you. And let me know too if something was super helpful. I have a podcast called the Unapologetic Woman Podcast, which you should totally come on that.
I would love
So
to.
fun. That'd be so fun. And I always love when people tell me topics they want me to teach on because like it's just it's fun, right? But this is our life and we get to live it and we get to enjoy it and we're not living it for other people. And this conversation just filled me up. I loved it, Nikki. Thanks so much for having
Oh,
me.
me too. And you guys, I will put the link to follow Jen on in the show notes so that you guys can go do that. But thank you so, so much for being on.
Yeah.
You're the best.
Aw, thanks so much. Bye.